Age of Change. Chapter 3. I had one of the longest, weirdest dreams I ever had in my life. In my dream, the world suddenly turned for the worst. There were monsters going around slaughtering people. I heard some of the world's ghastliest blood-curdling screams that was likely to give me nightmares for a long time coming. One good thing that happened was that I fought one of the monsters and lived to tell the tale. April even appeared in the dream. She fought 5 monsters to my 1. Man, even in a dream she was an amazing female. The last part of my dream was with April taking care of my wound and me sleeping on her couch. As in life, all good things must come to an end. I woke up from my sweat dream to a somewhat similar but foreign environment. I then remembered the environment was the same as April's place in my dream. I turned to what in my dream was a window to find April sitting by a window. That's when I put 2 and 2 together, and what I perceived to be a dream was actually reality. I chuckled to myself and thought that life was really strange. At times, one moment you're living a normal boring life and the next you're risking your fighting monsters. I got off the couch to go see what April was thinking about. When I got close enough to her, she gave off a feeling of being alone in the world. It sucked to see her like this, and it also hurt a bit to think that she believed she was alone when I was next to her. Even though she gave off this feeling, I wanted her to know that I would always be there for her in her time of need. I wouldn't be able to express all my feelings by telling her, so I decided to show her through my actions. While lost in my thoughts, April turned around to see me and asked if my arm was feeling better. I answered her by saying it was doing fine. As we were talking, I had a closer look at April's face to see that her eyes were puffy, and she had been crying. This showed me that no matter how tough a person's fortitude is, they will always have a time when they are vulnerable. I began to understand why she gave off the lonely feeling. The only thing I knew might help her grieving was to give her a shoulder she could lean on. I tried picking her up from her chair, but she started to fight me by pounding on my chest. I knew that she was just venting out her anger, her frustrations, and her resentment, and I just happened to be her outlet. When she started to run out of steam, she leaned on me and softly cried herself to sleep. I picked her up and walked her to the coach. I laid her on the coach as softly as I could, then went to her room to get a pillow and some covers. When I came back to April, I laid the covers on her and picked her head up to put the pillow under her. I looked at her while she slept and thought she was very beautiful. After looking at April, I had nothing better to do and remembered that on the stats it said I could improve them through repetitive actions. I thought that the best thing to do in this moment was to do the basic workouts such as push-ups, crunches, sit-ups, squats, and any other auxiliary workout that came to mind. I haven't been working out for a while, so during the workout I had to take long breaks in between. An hour later, I was extremely tired and had nothing else to do, so I picked up my phone to see if there was any news on what was happening. I believed that people were fighting for their lives and had other things to worry about than post any news. As I thought, there wasn't anything new posted. And just as I was about to come off the internet, something was posted. The news contained all the information that I summarized from my experience, and one shocking piece of information. The information stated that no modern firearms worked on the monsters. This information made me feel like someone punched me in my guts. It ruined most of my future plans for scavenging for guns and ammunition. It also made me think about everything else that may possibly stop working. I got off my phone and looked around April's apartment to look for something to do while April rested. I remembered that we left 6 clubs outside the apartment. I quietly walked to the door so that I didn't disturb April. I put my ear against the door to hear if there was anyone or anything outside the door. When I didn't hear anything, I opened the door as quietly as I could. I looked around the hallway to find that there wasn't anything there other than the 5 goblin corpses and 6 clubs. I moved the corpses away from the door and dragged the clubs as quietly as I could into the apartment. No matter how quietly as I dragged the clubs, they still made noise. But through all the noise April slept peacefully. I closed the door to the apartment and looked at my handiwork. While looking at the club, I used my skill identification. Wooden club. Attack power, 10 to 12. Durability, 59-60. Description, crude club made by the goblin race. While looking at the club's information, I didn't get the wow factor I was looking for. It was understandable, since the goblins were low-level monsters. Even though I was slightly disappointed, I didn't let it get to me. I started to think of different ways to make the clubs usable, since in their current state they were too heavy for us to walk with, no less swing it. There wasn't much things to work with in April's apartment other than kitchen utensils. I know I shouldn't be going through her stuff without her permission, but in a time of need I just had to. I found the biggest, sharpest knife that was available, then went back to the clubs. I sat against a wall while a club was in between my legs with the knife in my hands. I tried chopping at the club as if I had a machete in my hand, but the knife wasn't long enough, and I was afraid of cutting myself. I then proceeded to cut into the club the best way I could without getting injured. This was probably the hardest thing I ever did in my life. While cutting the club, the knife hardly did a scratch to it. I had to cut at the same spot for 5 minutes before I started to get some headway. My right arm was starting to get heavy, so I switched to my left arm. This time, the process was getting harder to cut since I was a righty. 10 minutes into the process, I hardly made any headway. Seeing that cutting from the middle of the cub wasn't working, I switched to working on the bottom. Surprisingly enough, cutting from the bottom was easier, but still didn't change the fact that it was very time-consuming. I started to complain to myself how hard this was until I remembered I didn't distribute any of my stat points. I said status window in my head to have my information show. I mentally clicked on stat points. Do you want to distribute your stat points? I obviously wanted to distribute the stats, so I said yes. I didn't think about the path I wanted to develop in the future. The only thing that was going through my mind was how I should solve my current dilemma. I then decided to put 3 points into strength and 1 point into endurance and dexterity. Are you sure with your selection? I said yes in my head. After I was done with distributing the points, I felt a warm current coursing through my body. It was hands down the most comfortable thing I have ever felt to date. While the warm feeling was going through me, I felt my body getting stronger. Compared to lifting weights, this was 10 times better. It would be even better if I didn't have to risk my life to get more points. When the current was done going through my body, I resumed cutting the club. The process was easier. 2 hours later, I had worked on 2 clubs. I only stopped when I sensed April was waking up. I checked on my 2 finished pieces and thought that they were very crude. I tried picking the clubs up to find they were lighter and movable. I checked on the new status of the clubs. Wooden clubs. Attack power, 7 to 8. Durability, 41-60. Description, crude club made by the goblin race, but was modified by an unqualified person. Wooden clubs. Attack power, 7 to 8. Durability, 43-60. Description, crude club made by the goblin race, but was modified by an unqualified person. I should be disappointed that both the attack power and durability decreased, but compared to not being able to move the clubs and moving the clubs, it was a big difference. Shortly after, April woke up and saw me doing a small victory dance. She giggled and said, "I didn't know that you could dance." I was so engrossed in my victory, I forgot she was about to wake up. I felt so embarrassed my face turned a tad bit red. "It's just something I picked up along the way, it isn't anything too big," I answered, while trying to get my emotions under control. whatever you say, she said. What time is it, and are we still going to look for supplies? I looked at my phone to find that it was already 3:15 in the afternoon. It's 3:15, I answered. Anytime you are ready to go, we will go look for the supplies. Give me a minute to get ready, she said back to me. 5 minutes later, we were ready to go. We both had a club to carry with an addition of an empty book bag on our backs. I put my ears against the door to see if there wasn't any danger. Seeing that there wasn't any, I opened the door. We both got out the door to hear some dragging sounds. Just got to love our luck. April closed the door behind us as quietly as she could in order to avoid alerting the potential goblin of our location. We went the opposite direction of where the sound was coming from. We didn't run into anything or anyone in the direction we choose. 30 seconds later, we arrived at the stairs. We slowly went down the stairs to find the coast was clear. We stared to slowly walk down the hallway to reach outside. If our luck was good, we wouldn't run into anything, but if our luck was bad, we had another thing coming. By the will of the universe, we ran into 3 goblins at the front of the exit and 2 goblins running to catch up to us from behind. We made a quick decision of her fighting the 3 monsters in front of us, while I dealt with the ones behind us. I knew that she was stronger than me, so I didn't complain with the situation. I had other things to worry about. It was hard for me to handle 1 goblin last time, now I had to handle 2. The goblins were about 10 meters from our position. I didn't want to interfere with April's fight, so I ran as fast as I could to give her distance. When I was 6 feet away from one of the goblins, it lunged at me with a wooden club in tow. I stopped my feet as fast as possible. With my quick reaction, the club landed half a foot away from my toes. I felt a cold chill in the back of my spine. My quick thinking saved me from a world of pain and potentially my death. Before I had the time to think, Goblin B reached behind Goblin A on the ground and jumped up while swinging its club like a bat. At this moment, the world seemed to slow down. I saw the club was heading to smash my face in. The only thing on my mind was to duck or I was going to die. With death at my front door, my body reacted quicker than it has been in my entire life. I ducked down just in time to hear a swish sound passing on top of my head. A couple of nanoseconds later, the club hit the opposite wall with a huge bang. I turned my face to the right to see the club was stuck in the wall. Just seeing the club in the wall made me break into a cold sweat. My heart felt like it was trying to break away from my chest. Goblin B tried to pull the club from the wall, to no avail. Goblin A on the floor picked the opportunity to swing his club at my knees. Luckily for me, Goblin B used enough force to pull the club from the wall, but on its way down, Goblin's A club hit it with full force. Goblin S body hit the right wall extremely hard. I don't think it would be able to get up from that injury. Goblin A was in shock after hitting its partner, but snapped out of it as soon as it happened. I took the opportunity in Goblin's A shock to swing my club at its head. Just before my club hit the goblin, it put up its free hand to block the blow. This quick action didn't help the goblin in the slightest. I put enough force behind my swing to know that it would receive heavy damage. My club hit the goblin with a sickening sound of bones breaking. The sound made my stomach hurt, but it was better the goblin than me was hit. The goblin fell to the ground, then its body started to twitch. I kind of felt bad for the goblin, but I felt no remorse. I swung at the goblin's head to end its mercy. When the club landed on the goblin's head, all of its brain matter sprayed on my body. I felt like throwing up at the gruesome sight. But I held it in. I turned to look at the other goblin and saw that it wasn't dead, and it was starting to regain some mobility, so I dragged myself to finish it off. If you like what you heard, like and subscribe.